Welcome to Weird Talks. This is a series that highlights conversations that wander off the map of ordinary experience and into the strange terrain of consciousness itself. And here we're going to explore the anomalous, the noetic, and the deeply weird corners of human awareness, moments that feel charged with meaning and encounters that defy the easy explanation, and experiences that blur the line between mind, matter, and mystery. And so this space is really for those stories that don't quite fit. It's all the uncanny synchronicities and the altered states and the intuitive flashes, all those weird liminal encounters and those quiet but undeniable feelings that something more is going on beneath the surface of our reality. So whether it's psychology or a zone of perception or the edges of mystical experiences, or even those like raw firsthand accounts of strange encounters that people have glimpsed something beyond the everyday. Weird Talks follows the curiosity wherever it leads. So the first episode is going to be in conversation with Dave Green. Yes, Dave Green. Hey, welcome. So great to have you as the first of the Weird Talkers. Dave Green is a lucid dreaming artist, researcher, uh, author now, because you got a book coming out, as well as like a teacher, like an educator on lucid dreaming and explorer of consciousness. And you've done some public speaking engagements as well. So I guess you're officially public speaker now too. And we're going to talk a little bit about what is coming up with your journey and your practices. And Dave, sorry, I'm talking in the third person, like Dave, hey, Dave. You approach all of this immersive sort of dreaming environments through a kind of an exploratory and playful sort of zone, jumping into the realms of creativity, but also like experimentation when it comes to lucid dreaming, which is always really fun because you have a very scientific approach to what is actually going on when I go lucid within these states and make artwork. And also the creator of a really cool project, which I have the pleasure to be a part of, called the Infinite Andre Project, which we're going to talk about as well, which is an amazing project that's been ongoing. But yesterday you launched it on your website, so we'll talk about that. And also, of course, the book that's coming out literally next month in May. And we'll talk about that. And I had the pleasure to read the book before it hit the shelves. So excited for that to come out. And so, yeah, let's kick it off with some weirdness. So wanted to ask you, and I love asking this of many lucid dreamers. What was the first lucid dreaming experience you had? And how did that hook you in to like the zone of let's lucid dream, let's do something, let's explore more, let's try to make it happen more? What was your earliest experience, Dave?
Sure. So yeah, it'd be hard to pinpoint a specific dream, but I started having them when I was really young, like as young as I can. Like the earliest dreams I can remember were there was lucid dreams kind of mixed in there. So I think I started having them as a way to deal with nightmares. I think lots of people who have lucid dreams fairly naturally seem to have this same story that, yeah, they weren't like, I don't think they were any worse than any kid has nightmares, but I had nightmares as a kid. And at some point I kind of realized I could wake myself up from those dreams. And then I kind of intuitively realized that, well, if this is a dream, why am I? Because I think everyone has that experience where you have a nightmare and you're like, oh my God, this is a dream. Then you wake up. And I was doing that a bit prematurely. I was like, I'm a dream. And then I was making myself wake up. And I was like, well, if I'm realizing it's a dream, I don't need to wake up. I can sort of stay in the dream and change it because it's not scary anymore, right? And then, so I was doing that from like a young age, maybe like 6 or 7. And then that was just sort of a regular part of my dream life. And it wasn't until years later when I heard the term lucid dreaming, I think on like a TV documentary. and then did a little bit of research around that. Got Stephen LaBerge's book, and then sort of started applying those techniques, and then sort of started having them even more regularly, and probably sort of too much at that stage, to be honest, because I have them sort of like fairly naturally anyway. But there's been, I guess, as a teenager, I was trying to do it like all the time and writing everything down and all that. And so yeah, that was one period in my life when I was very heavily into it. And then I was kind of studying art at the time, and it just seemed obvious to combine the lucid dream stuff with the art stuff. Because whenever I look, I was like into surrealism, like most teenage artists are, and I'm still into it now. And there's almost like, although I love that stuff, there's almost like a frustration where I'd look at it and go like, yeah, it's kind of dreamy, but it's sort of, I guess this frustration that you can never really like capture the experience of being in a dream and knowing that you can never really do it justice. So I had this idea that instead of trying to depict the dream, I could create artworks directly in the dream. So get a dream pen and a dream piece of paper directly in the dream, and then make a drawing in the dream and recreate it when I wake up. And even if they're like really simple images, it's still like something from the dream, quote unquote. I mean, it's still not exactly verbatim, but to me, like doing it that way seemed like the way I could get closest to the dream, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And also, it's what's deeply fascinating about this process is what the dream brings you and gives you, because a lot of it is very cryptic and riddle-like, and
Mm.
there's a lot of play on words. There's a lot of words that appear to you in
Yeah,
lucid dreams that kind of blend into the images that are arriving and emerging out of the paper. If you can explain a little bit about like the process of, entering the dream or setting the intention into lucid dreaming, and then how the process happens. Maybe give an example of something that has appeared to you in the dream that you've created, and then you therefore woke up and then recreated what you saw.
yeah. I have actually got a artwork to hand. I'm not gonna, because I know some people probably listen to this in audio, so I won't overly do this, but maybe it'd be useful just to show one. Should I do that?
Yeah,
They look, yeah. So this is like the type of thing that comes up. So that's like what you're saying. You get weird words that says elephant. They're often spelt incorrectly, and I like to think not just because I'm dyslexic, but yeah, there's quite often that's a pretty typical one. I mean, I've done hundreds of these, but they fairly often contain words and numbers. And it's quite interesting because words and numbers are like in regular, there's been studies on this. And yeah, words or text in general is incredibly rare in dreams. It very rarely shows up, apparently. And the only reason I think it probably shows up when I'm doing a drawing is because, as you know, lucid dreams are all about expectation. So I think in waking life, half the time when you're looking at a page, you're reading, right? So I think I pick up this piece of paper to do a drawing, and I just expect, and I just associate that with looking at writing, right? So I think that's why they almost always contain writing. But then, of course, the whole thing's like a feedback loop. So the more drawings I do that have writing in them, the more I expect to see drawings with writing in them next time, and the whole thing just sort of keeps going. And
absolutely.
I get like recurring images as well for the same reason.
What would be some of the recurring images that you receive in lucid dreams?
So teddy bears come up quite a lot. Oh, little heads. This one's got a bunch of little heads in it. See
Yeah.
around there, all those, it's probably quite hard to see, but those little circles are all tiny faces. I mean, and I imagine that's probably to do with, we're wired to see faces and everything, right? So that's, I think, quite often in altered states. Chairs, chairs and tables happen a bit.
One thing I notice with working with dreamers over many decades is that people seem to have their own unique dream language, and
Mm.
it can come up in a whole wide variety of sort of symbols or motifs that occur in the dreams. And it gets, like you said, there is a feedback loop where if you really lean into and bridge over the symbols by way of artwork and by way of interpretation or working with them, it seems to do an interesting feedback loop where it reinforces these symbols and motifs, and they happen more and more. I have the same with specifically with owls, and owls are like the whenever an owl appears in a dream in any kind of way, whether it's a billboard or a toy or an actual owl in a dream, it will wake me up. That will become the actual dream initiated lucid maker that okay, I'm dreaming. And so it's great to be able to bridge these overs, because I think that's the key with lucid dreaming, is to work with those images, symbols in the waking reality, because that's what helps to keep the consciousness engaged in the dreams itself. And your book shows us quite a bit the different things that you've received within the dreams, and sometimes the imagery that you end up receiving and creating within the dreams seem to have a quality of almost like a precognitive hint towards things that unfold in your waking reality. In other words, the things that you capture within the lucid dream somehow come to pass later on in your waking reality. I just want to hear about like some of the maybe, kind of key featured experiences that you've had in that capacity. Would love to hear about that weirdness.
Yeah, well, that's definitely the weird and the and the weird talk. Yeah, to sort of as a way sort of into that. Yeah, when I something that's quite surprising to people when I started doing the all this, well, obviously I've been lucid dreaming for ages and sort of dabbled with the artwork previously, but when I started doing it more seriously over the last 5 years, when I started doing it, I was like, my whole thing was like, let's do something that looks totally crazy, but is like, but I was a bit allergic to the more like fringe areas that are associated with lucid dreaming. I kind of didn't take them that seriously, to be honest. Not because I'd thought about it a great deal, like most people. I'm just like, no, I don't believe in that stuff. But then I was given the opportunity to take part in a experiment into precognitive dreams with a neuroscientist called Julia Mossbridge. And we did that, and it was over a couple of years. It's quite sort of start and stop over a couple of years. And over that time, I started learning about precognitive dreams. I read a book. I happened to have it here. This wasn't that I was going to do a show and tell. Like, my tea just literally happens to be resting on it. Time Loops by Eric Wargo. Don't know if you've read that one. I absolutely love that book. And that's, just puts forward a really convincing case that precognition is genuine. And dreams are the way that not all, I mean, it can happen in other ways, but dreams are a very common way. And anyway, to cut a long story short, that experiment did end up getting slightly positive results. It wasn't like blow your socks off. Like, there was a skeptic involved in the protocol, a guy called Chris French, which made the whole experience very interesting because there's like a skeptical voice on there and like a few proponents of precognition as well. So that's really interesting to see those two sort of conflicting views. But the way he put it was the skeptics kind of came away happy thinking there's not quite enough there, and the believers came away happy thinking there were, So one thing I took away from that is that science is by no means as cut and dry as people might think. It's a single experiment. But anyway, from a personal point of view, there was enough in there for me during the whole time of doing that experiment, and not just the experiment itself, reading about the phenomena and lots of dreams I had outside the study. I've come out the other side of that thinking precognitive dreams, that's, if you held a gun to my head, I would say that that's the real deal. That's something that does really happen. And I'm really interested in that. So that's been a big shift in my worldview.
Yeah, I mean, it is a shift in also just like the view of what is the true nature of reality as well, right?
Mm.
Because we live in a currently a more sort of Newtonian or materialist sort of construct of how reality works. But we have burgeoning science around the quantum kind of model that really would point towards that time is not linear. It is absolutely a non-linear process, and that would fit nicely within the zones of precognition. And it brings to mind the hypothesis of retrocausality, for example,
Mm.
that perhaps there are future, you know, atoms or particles that vibrate and give information that go back in time to kind of prompt something
Yeah,
within
yeah, yeah.
the timeline that something's going to happen, and there's just still so much we don't know about it. The thing is, a lot of people have experienced precognition, surprisingly so. Like a very high percentage of human beings say, yeah, I've had a psychic dream before or a precognitive dream before. So it really fits within the high weirdness of the human experience, and that, even though science can't pinpoint exactly how it happens or why it happens quite yet, I do think one day we'll probably get there around it. But I'm of the
Yeah.
opinion that, don't wait for the science to catch up. If you're having these experiences and you're curious, just keep exploring and like keep pushing to see what could be on the horizon, that because it's like that's how we evolve. We evolve through curiosity and playfulness, and like let's just see what's over the hill. The science will catch up. It will eventually catch
Yeah,
up
yeah.
with these sort of things, but yeah, just keep exploring. It's really interesting. With the precognitive, images or information and even words or numbers that you get through lucid dreams and you bridge them over in your artwork in the waking reality. Um, do you have an experience that you can share, like something that was like had a precognitive sort of edge to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of my precognitive dreams have happened outside the artwork, but there's one that happened within the artwork process that was a pretty good one. So I do this thing where I do portraits of people. So I meet, if I was doing one for example, I would meet Tree, the dream version of Tree in a dream, and then I get a piece of paper and I kind of hold it up to your face, and then I watch as the page turns transparent, and then images kind of appear on the paper. And the reason I do that rather than just drawing the person is it gets very complicated. If I'm drawing you and looking at you, it doesn't really work. So I've just devised my own sort of technique to do portraits of people in the dream. And I did one for this guy called Adam in America. And I'm pretty like, I almost like never interpret them. People are like, that looks, what does that mean, Dave? And I'm like, I don't know. It's art. It's, whatever. And this one had a few faces on it. They don't always have faces, but this one had a few different faces on it, some axes, and then the word destry, Destry. And lots of the words that come up are like nonsense words. So I just assumed that was one of those. I think I Googled it and I saw it was a name of like some Western movie or something back in the day. But anyway, when I sent the person like a preview scan of the image before posting it to them, and I emailed the guy the scan, and he replied saying, "Oh, this is really weird. I'm sat next to someone called Destry." And I thought, for me, that was a pretty good one because it's like I didn't even know that was a word, let alone a name. Never heard it before in my life. And then the next day, the guy's sitting next to someone with that name. And that seemed, these things are like famously hard to judge, but that one, I think you'd have to be pretty, that one seems quite unlikely. It seems pretty unlikely to me.
That one feels very unlikely, but also I love the trickster nature of this. That when he received it,
Mm.
it was exactly the moment in time where he was sitting next to a person called Destry.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah.
almost as though
It's
there
weird,
was
isn't it?
some kind of, yeah, like a sort of cosmic giggle connected to that, or a cosmic
Yeah,
joke
yeah.
connected to that like loop back to you to confirm
Yeah, exactly. It's like
that.
I wouldn't have known that unless I did send it to him, right? So that's like, I guess that's where the time loops comes in
Yes,
Eric's thing.
the time
Yeah.
loops. And also, something interesting too is this concept of like maybe a mutual or shared dream space that people could actually connect to that's out of time and space, out of material reality. Because consciousness is quite elusive and we have like such a hard problem of consciousness currently, we can't even really quite figure out through the realms of neuroscience as to what makes us be able to perceive and have the phenomenon of consciousness emerge through what is known as qualia, like all of the senses of memory, sight, information, touch, smell, taste. What is it that we're able to perceive? And it seems as though, like in dream states, it feels much more accessible in many ways in terms of being able to receive precognitive information or just like strange riddles and other types of information too. Do you think, in terms of shared dream space, that dreamers or people who are consciousness explorers could have a connection or an experience within, I guess, the realm or the dimension of dreaming?
Yeah, I tend to. It's funny, like since getting switched on to the idea of precognition, I tend to just interpret everything weird as precognition. That's precognition. So I see it like, yeah, I don't really go that heavily into the idea of like a shared dream space. When weird stuff happens, yeah, I sort of say that's precognition. That's my go-to thing.
It's a
Although
it's a
saying that, I
yeah.
have, it's funny. I guess I've got a bit of a weird like view because the other big sort of world shift I had was in exploring the difference between lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences. Because I think the type of lucid dreaming I do is very similar to an out-of-body experience. Arguably, I have called it that in the past, and but I do see it as something that's just happening inside my head. But I did at one point go on a bit of journey trying to think, well, if a genuine veridical out-of-body experience was possible, like what would need to be true for that to be the case. And then I got into all the different isms of consciousness, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I came out the other side thinking materialism is a load of rubbish and have leaned very heavily towards these more sort of cosmic consciousness ideas now. So I guess like I do have a worldview where that a sort of shared dreamscape would be possible, but I'm just really into precognition.
Yeah, I mean, precognition is a great way of explaining a lot of these kind of connections with other people and receiving information that feels like a prompt towards a situation that a person would experience. But it brings to mind, I'm trying to look on my phone here because I had a dream, a lucid dream about you, that we were together in a lucid dream, and you were drawing an image, your classic Sharpie black marker, drawing on a white sheet of paper, and I went lucid in the dream, and you're like, "This is cool, right? Here, draw this," and I drew it. I'm trying to find it in our chat. I drew it, and then when I woke up in waking reality. I drew it again, and then I sent it to you. But I'm trying to look to see what it was. An image of a pair of sunglasses.
Yeah, yeah, I
You
remember. Yeah,
remember that? To me, I woke up kind of mind blown slightly because of that. Oh, here it is. Um, Back in 2021, you showed up in one of my lucid dreams, and you showed me how to draw a pair of black sunglasses. And the reason why I reminded you is because you put on Instagram an image you received in a lucid dream of a pair of sunglasses.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So I was like, "Hey, dude, remember how you showed me how to do that?" Also, yeah, because in the dream it was a pair of glasses, but also
yeah,
with
yeah,
a
yeah.
movie camera.
Oh,
There was like a
yes, yes,
little
yes.
so that's what you showed me what to do in the lucid dream. But
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you also had
That is exactly the type of thing I do.
there
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
are.
So you had the dream, and then what was it, a couple of days afterwards? It was you
You
saw that?
you
Yeah.
posted that, and I was like, did we have a shared dream experience, or did I have a precognitive um, art lesson by Dave Green in a lucid dream?
Yeah.
That was quite
Yeah,
fun.
it could be either, right? Yeah, it's hard to separate them. Yeah, that's cool.
It is
Yeah.
really cool, and these sort of things seem to be really um, kind of mysterious. I want to get back to what you were saying about the out of body experience because we know
Mm.
lucid dreaming scientifically exists. We've had sleep labs and tests around lucid dreaming that really gave it the green light that it does fit within the framework of a valid dreaming experience. But the out of body experience has not really passed the test in terms of scientific uh, data inquiry. It hasn't really quite passed the test. I'm still I'm a bit like you in terms of like what is an OBE, how is it different from a lucid dream? And I have my own thoughts as to what's really happening. It's almost like a spectrum of consciousness experiences. The reason why I'm bringing it is because, and you explain in the book, your book, what it's like when you have a lucid dream. Your lucid dream happens within your bedroom most of the times, and you find yourself phased out into a dreaming experience or within your room, and then there's a sheet of paper there, and then you have your lucid art moments within the dream. Is all of your experiences within the room, within the bedroom that you're sleeping?
Yeah, so yeah, I'd say about 70 to 80% start like that. They call it a, well, it's a wild, isn't it? A wake initiated lucid dream. But you can have wilds that don't start in your room like that, but like almost, well, pretty much all of mine do. But then, yeah, so I start off in my room. Sometimes I like when I started doing this, it's funny because it was like, if you remember, it was over the pandemic, and there's quite a lot of interest from like press and lucid dreaming, and they would sort of asked me like, "Oh, what have you been doing in lockdown with your lucid dreams?" And ironically, I was just in my dreams, staying in my room. Like I could explore the whole universe, but I was staying like 5 feet away from my bed in my dreams, doing a drawing in my bedroom. But anyway, but yeah, so I've definitely gone through periods of just doing that. But then, like for example, if I want to do a portrait for someone, I kind of look for them in the house to begin with, but then I might fly out the window and I'll see them on the street or something. I did go for a period of trying to like travel to people's homes in the dream,
Mm.
but I think lots of people find this as much easier to meet a specific person than it is to go to a specific place. When I go to a place, I seem to like just ends into some really long adventure that's really hard to get there. So yeah, so to cut a long story short, they're kind of around my house or around the roads nearby in general. But the further away I get from my house, the more different things start looking.
Yeah, so like people who are OB-ers or astral projectors, they would say, Dave, that totally tracks with astral projection. That's what you're doing, and
Yeah.
doing that, not lucid dreaming. And sometimes I feel like confining these sort of experiences to these very specific boxes is not the way forward, because I feel
Mm.
like the foundation of these experiences is consciousness. And consciousness itself, I feel, is quite slippery and quite expansive in many ways. And I see even like dreaming and what is known as astral projection or the out of body experience is just merely the phasing out of consciousness into other experiences. So they're experiencing, consciousness is experiencing things in liminal places, in liminal threshold places. We can get to those liminal threshold places through doing a meditation, through going into a trance experience, or hypnosis, or regression therapy, or even psychedelic experiences. But the key is that consciousness phases out of an ordinary material experience into something that's a little bit more liminal. And so I see it all within the spectrum of just consciousness phasing out into different, I'd say different dimensions, maybe, or different dimensions of reality. Or if we were to look at reality as more of a quantum sort of blueprint, it would be many layers, like the many layers of reality. And the interesting thing is, it's perhaps it's going into those liminal places that we're able to receive information like precognition or meet the consciousness of someone else. It wouldn't be as easy to do that if we were just stuck within the chattering mind of our material form. So this is I've been doing a lot of thought about this too, Dave. Like it's like
Oh
I,
man.
I think people want to put these experiences in boxes. Like it's astral projection, it's lucid dreaming, it's um, the out of body experience. But I see it as it's an experience of consciousness
Yeah,
in a different space. You're
Yeah,
experiencing something.
they definitely is like I talk. There's a whole chapter on it in the book, and that I basically paint a picture of saying I basically intentionally try and create a really messy picture where I'm like, there's instances where people talk about out of body experiences in very similar terms to dreams, and there's instances where people like I talk about because I think the sort of cartoonish way that a lot of time it's framed is that dreams are in here and an OBE is out there outside of your head. But if you think about so many indigenous cultures, they see dreams in an identical way to out of body experiences. So for them, every night when you dream, your soul leaves your body and you wander around. So in that culture, it wouldn't make sense to make that distinction. And even like you've spoken about mutual dreaming, we talk about mutual dreaming. Assumedly, in a mutual dream, that experience isn't happening in your head. It's got someone's got to be outside that head in that in a mutual dream, right? So that's another one where you're talking about dreams in an almost identical space to that which an OBE would have to be possible. And there's many things like that. So it's kind of a blurry picture. So really what it boils down to for me, the labels are kind of it's just a blurry picture that maybe isn't I mean, obviously people use those terms. So in that sense, they must be helpful to some people. But I think all it really came down to for me, I realize, is the question of in these experiences, no matter what you call them, is it possible to, because this is again like the cartoon way people see an OBE, but by no means not everyone who does it sees it this way, but the idea that you can exit your body and see the physical world, this world. If you're getting really technical, I would say see what we colloquially call the physical world, because in some of these world beliefs there isn't such a thing. But this world around us, can you see that world from a point outside of your physical body? Because that's really what it comes down to. As I say, not all OBs are that, but that's the bit that people are kind of interested in. And again, the point I make that because there are these veridical OBEs where people pick up information and surprise, surprise, I say it's precognition.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I'm just really into precognition. So I think, yeah, it might be kind of precognition in disguise. So that's the argument I put forward.
Yeah, it's good to hear these things too because I think like it's it divides the experiences and I think that when people like really lean into like no it's this no it's that it almost like prevents from it expanding and growing and evolving. Um I think it's just something that wants more exploration. And
Yeah,
I think that finding something that works for yourself in terms of any kind of experience of dreaming, whether it's lucid dreaming or astral projection or out of body experiences, um, see it as an exploration of your consciousness.
yeah. I mean, all the label, they're all just subjective anyway. So if you think you have an out of body experience, you have. If you
Exactly.
think you've had a lucid dream, you have it. So the definitions are subjective based on what you felt like you experienced. So it's pretty much as simple as that.
Exactly. All these things are, a transpersonal effect and something uniquely, unique for each person who is experiencing them. I want to talk a little bit about because we're going into the zones of like shared dream space a bit. Like where is it actually that our consciousness goes and how we pick up information? Let's talk about the Infinite Andre Project.
Yes.
Yes. What
Yeah.
is it?
Okay.
I mean, I know
What
what it
is
is,
it?
but
What is it? All
for
right.
our viewers and listeners, what is the Infinite Andre Project? How did it start and what's going on?
So as we've already covered, like the main thing I do is drawings in my dreams, but I've also experimented with doing poetry as well. As anyone who's done any lucid dreaming will know, when you speak to dream characters, they talk really strangely. They talk in kind of like a riddle-like way, and again, those sentences come out in my drawings. So I thought it'd be cool to um, do a poetry project in collaboration with some of these dream characters. And I already experimented with it a little bit with the famous romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So he had it was a very, very famous bit of dream-inspired creativity. which there may have been some opium involved as well, where he was writing the poem Kubla Khan. He woke up from a dream and wrote this amazing poem, and then he was jotting it all down, and there was a knock at the door, and he got interrupted, and he went to it and came back and had forgot the rest of the poem. So it was like an unfinished masterpiece that came from a dream. So I thought I sometimes do kind of like lucid dream satire. So I met Samuel Taylor Coleridge in a dream, and I asked him to finish the finish the poem. And I'm trying to think of the line now. He said, "Oh, the gang work really hard to fuse reindeer." So that's how he chose to finish his fame. So that's the end of Kubla Khan, in case anyone was wondering. And from there, I thought, let's let's see what other poets we can collaborate with in the dream world. So I thought an obvious choice would be Andre Breton, the poet and founder of surrealism, because that the way dream characters talk just seemed to match that world perfectly. So I wanted to do a longer poem, and originally I was intending to meet Andre Breton, get him to say a line of poetry, and then I'd remember that line, and then I'd go back into my dream and recite it to him to have him respond, and just keep doing that. So I got like a long poem. But then I thought, well, it seems a shame just to do it myself, and it'd be way more interesting and way more in the, in the sort of vein of what the surrealists were all about, collaborative project, and we do it with lots of different lucid dreamers. So that's what we did. So I started it off. I went into a dream. I found Andre Breton at I think it's in like a cafe. I actually tried to meet him in one of the cafes in Paris where the surrealists hung out. So I went to that place in a dream. He said a line. I believe the line was, "The characters swiftly shatter abort." And I woke up and memorized that line, told you guys, because you were, as you know, were involved in the project with about 10 other people. And then, yeah, and then everyone sort of took it in turns to go back in the dream and get a line of poetry from Andre. It didn't necessarily, like it didn't always work where they recited it, because as we found out, it's quite challenging. And people would like kind of misremember it. But that was kind of the idea, it was like a game of telephone as the idea. So it's sort of, so in a way, it is dream characters talking to other dream characters across dreams with the help of us sort of in between. And now, so what we did there was kind of the soft launch stage of the project. So it kind of got the ball rolling, but now it's up online. It's the Infinite Andre project. No, sorry, just infiniteandre.com. So the poem's up there with all the dreams. And the idea is, as the name suggests, it just goes on forever. So any lucid dreamers around the world can go on there, get the last line of the poem, tell it to Andre Breton. He'll give them another line. You add it to the poem, and it just keeps on going forever. So there's all these different Andre Bretons all talking to each other across different people's dreams.
I love it. I mean, like, I had so much fun on that project and I couldn't believe it. And the dream experience I had was just slightly mind-blowing. So, uh, what I have here is what was on
Oh, you still there? Wow.
yeah, beside my bed. So, for my dream incubations, I printed out an image of Andre Breton. I have him saying, "Meet me at Cafe Serrano." Like so,
Nice,
and
nice.
recite first line of the poem, receive my response. So I had this like right next to my head in the bed,
Yeah.
and I Googled images of the cafes that he hung out in that area of Paris. And so when I found myself walking through these kind of zones in a dream, I entered a cafe and I ran into a really good friend of mine, Lewis. He's a lucid dreamer as well. And I said, "Oh my God, I got to tell you about this project about the infinite Andre." So I'm telling him about this in the dream and had gone lucid. And then, called out to Andre, received the bit of poetry within this cafe. But then it got really trippy. Do you remember when I shared with you that a
Yeah, yeah,
student
yeah.
of mine
It's
got,
in the book. I write about it in the book.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So folks, you got to hear about that.
I was asking you, but what are you doing here? Like, what are you doing in Paris? And you said to me, I'm visiting Paris and I'm staying in this great place called Saint-Germain. And you were struggling to find the end of it. And you say, Saint-Germain of the Wood. And actually, the real name is Saint-Germain-des-Prés, which is like kind of like I don't know how you translate that anyway. So it's quite funny. So I wanted to let you know and wishing you a great day.
Yeah, so she said she had a dream about you and you were walking around on the streets of Paris. I think she said 19th century Paris, was it?
Yeah.
And yeah, and you were kind of looking lost on the streets of Paris, but she didn't know you were in your dreams also on the streets of Paris. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she named the exact area.
Oh yeah, where the surrealists hung out. Yeah, yeah.
She said, I was so confused in the dream because you were there. I'm like, what's Tree doing here? And I said, oh, I'm staying in a certain area. That was
Saint-Germain, I think it
yeah,
was.
Saint-Germain, the same area. So that was interesting because this is a person who wasn't part of the project. She's a student of mine that I haven't heard from in a couple of years. And literally days after that dream, out of the blue, said, I had a dream of you. We were in the same dreamscape, which was Paris, and very specific details as to an area I was staying in, which was the area that I was, connecting to within the lucid dream to meet Andre Breton. So it was kind of
Yeah, that was a
cool.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah, to me that felt like added weirdness, which made it much more fun and also just like we're on to something here. And just through the lens of quantum physics, it really tracks with the many, many worlds theory, many dimensions, many timelines, and that perhaps our consciousness can kind of tap into all of those zones if we just develop awareness and give ourselves permission to explore. And just through the dreams, we can set up very simple practices of intention, like me just putting this beside my bed and just doing my lucid dreaming techniques to connect. But the added bonus was someone who's not even connected to the project saying, hey, I stumbled across you in dreams in
Yeah.
Paris. So I was like, that's addedly
Yeah. That
really.
was a good bit. And there was a few other good moments on there as well. Like I think because obviously when I was writing the book, I went through all the emails as well to pick out all the good bits. And there's one, I think it was Michael said that he was in a dream and he saw like a really old Andre Breton and he tried to engage him and he said, oh, so many people have been looking for me recently, which I thought was funny.
Really
Yeah.
fun. Something else that really tracked too was the surrealist style. So the line of poetry that Andre gave me in the lucid dream, um, and I heard it, his voice kind of came out of the darkness of the cafe, and I saw it within the dream, so
Oh,
spelled
yeah.
out, which was unique. And the dream and the line of verse really tracked with his sort of the way he worked as a surrealist in terms of his play on words, which I didn't really know about. Like I'm aware of Breton's work, but I've not like studied his poetry or whatnot. So quite, a newbie.
What was the line? Can you remember it?
The line was the lonely road is
Oh,
death,
it's
but
death.
it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah.
lonely and only, and it was a play on words. So it was like lonely only.
I remember that. Yeah, that was a good one. And then the next person after you, I think it may have been Lana, and her one was I can't remember what her sentence was, but it was also a bit in brackets, which
Yeah.
had obviously been influenced by yours. So that was interesting.
Which is interesting. And then
Yeah.
I kind of researched it later, and it really tracked with the sort of his prose and the way he put things together in these sort of play on words. It was really cool. I love that project. So anyone listening, check out
Yeah.
infiniteandre.com.
Because in a way, it's only just begun. So the idea is everyone keeps adding to it. So yeah, I hope that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a form of like an exquisite corpse that's come through in
Yeah.
lucid dreams. Yeah, let's talk about your book. It's coming.
Yeah. It's
You know,
coming out.
tell us all about it. I mean, I've read it,
I've got
so
it. I've got it here. I actually got the first physical copy yesterday. So
oh my
as an author,
gosh,
you'll know that's a very exciting moment. So that's the book. So
that's
Doodles in the Dark, an artist's guide to lucid dreaming. And it's full of, yeah, so it's full of it's full of illustrations like that. It's full of my drawings in there. So it's like half text, half drawings. So yeah, as the title suggests, it's an artist's guide to lucid dreaming. So yeah, so it just sort of tells my story of how I started making artwork in dreams, and then it sort of tackles all the big top, well, it teaches you how to lucid dream, talks a little bit about dreams and creativity. And then it kind of tackles all the big subjects in lucid dreaming, many of which been talking about here, and kind of weaves my artwork into those topics. So yeah, I talk about the precognition experiment in there, which was using my drawings. In that, I talk about dream characters, and I was involved in another scientific study where with a guy called Antonio Zadra from the University of Montreal. And that was a study in which I gave dream characters a pen and paper. And a bit like the poetry thing, I asked them to do the creativity for me. I got them to do a drawing, which I then recreate when I wake up. And I do a bit of a philosophical exploration of that around, are dream characters independently conscious? A question that almost anyone who tries lucid dreaming will have asked themselves at one point or another. And yeah, talk about out of body experiences, lucid dreams. And there's a whole chapter on there about consciousness, the nature of consciousness. I thought I'd tackle that. That seemed like an easy one. And I haven't solved it. And then it rounds the lucid void, so the mystical end of lucid dreaming. And because when I'm not doing artworks from my dreams, that's my favorite thing to do is meditate in lucid dreams. And then yeah, kind of experience almost akin to a contentless dream and kind of yeah, very deep meditations within lucid dreaming. So that's it's funny, like people often ask me about, they kind of assume I'm doing and I get it because this space is all kind of about that. They assume I'm doing the artwork as a kind of well-being thing, which I'm kind of not. I'm kind of just showing off in my dreams, but the dream yoga stuff, I thought I needed to include a bit of that in the book. So that the dream yoga stuff is all about that, the meditating in dreams, that very unambiguously when I wake up from those experiences, I feel like it's very meaningful and very positive. It's not saying the drawings aren't, but they are it's sort of like a little bit like work. And I make a joke of that in the book as well, because when I signed the contract to do that book, I signed a contract to have I believe it was 90 new drawings in the book. So that's 90 lucid dreams. I was contracted to have 90 dreams, which I found was quite funny. And yeah, so it's definitely like work for that period of
Yeah.
time.
Like no pressure, but like, can
Yeah, yeah.
you produce 19 works out of 19 lucid dreams?
Yeah, I had to do it was like I don't know. I mean, it ended up taking 2 years, so it wasn't I can't remember how much it worked out to, but it was still quite a lot. Yeah.
So who's the book for? Do you
Well, I can answer you that because it says right here on the blurb, it says it is for artists, oddballs, and anyone interested in the creative power of their nocturnal reveries. And I kind of put that on there. I mean, what might not be obvious even from that. It's an artist's guide to lucid dreaming, but it's almost as much a visual guide to lucid dreaming by an artist as it is for a guide for artists, if that makes sense. Like anyone would find it interesting. Anyone, what a bold claim. It's not just for artists, even, do you get what I'm trying to say?
I get what you're
Yeah. Sorry,
saying.
that was a very garbled
No,
sales
it's
pitch.
so perfect. It's for us oddballs too. It's
Yeah,
for all the weirdos as well, which is
yeah,
great. And awesome. So everyone, you can pick up a copy of Dave's new book, which is
yeah. So
May 14th.
May 14th. I should say the currently my publishing deal is only for the UK
Oh,
and the
yes.
Commonwealth. So if you're not in those areas, what you can do is if you contact me via my website, because you can still go to it for the UK Amazon, but it will cost, as we say in England, it will cost an arm and a leg. It'll be quite expensive. So what I suggest you do, if you get in touch with me via my website, dave-green.co.uk, I can give you a signed copy, which still it'll cost a bit to ship, but at least you're getting a signed copy. So
Yeah. And he'll also sign your copy in a lucid dream as well. So, added
yes, yes,
bonus.
I would. Yeah, I'll have to figure out how that'll work, but yeah, I'll work on that one.
We'll summon you, Dave. We'll summon you in
Yeah,
a wild
yeah.
and get you to sign our copies. What do you got coming up? What do you got coming up? Because I know you're based in London, and anyone who might be passing through London, you got stuff
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, so I got a couple of talks sort of promote the book, so I've got to written it down here so I don't forget it. So I'm in Watkins Books on July 16th, doing a talk and a book signing. And I'm also doing another one I'm not sure the venue, it's in Islington on June the 8th with an organization called Pints of Knowledge. Oh, and most importantly, the book launch, I almost forgot that one. The book launch is on May 9th at Bard Books on Roman Road.